Hello there, weary souls. I'm your drowsy historian, and I'm delighted you found your way here tonight. Perhaps you're lying in bed, the weight of another long day pressing against your shoulders, the blue glow of your phone, the only light in the darkness. Or maybe you're curled up in a favorite chair, seeking refuge from the endless scroll of notifications, the relentless demands of modern life pulling at the edges of your consciousness. Take a breath with me. Feel yourself settling into this moment, into this quiet space we're about to share. Tonight, we're going to journey together to a different kind of weariness, a different kind of seeking for peace. We're traveling back to Georgian London, to the smoky, gaslit streets of the 1790s, where the line between medicine and poison was as thin as morning mist over the Thames. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? What time is it in your corner of the world? Drop a comment and let me know. There's something wonderfully comforting about knowing we're all gathered here together, scattered across time zones, united in our search for rest and quiet stories from the past. If you find these journeys helpful for sleep, consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Your support helps me research these forgotten corners of history and keeps these stories coming to you week after week. And if you're someone who struggles with outside noise while trying to sleep, might I suggest a good pair of sleep earbuds? I'll put some recommendations in the description below. They've been a game changer for many of our regular listeners. Now then, my drowsy companions, lie back, get comfortable, pull that blanket a little higher, let your breathing slow and deepen. Tonight, we're going to walk in the shoes of someone whose story has been largely forgotten by history. Someone whose struggles with what they thought was medicine became something much darker. Let's begin. It's October 1794, and you are Sarah Mitchell, a seamstress living in a narrow house on Drury Lane. The morning light filtering through your small, grimy window is weak and gray, typical of London's autumn day. You can hear the familiar sounds of the city awakening, the clip-clop of horses on cobblestones, the cry of street vendors already hawking their wares, the distant rumble of cartwheels over uneven stone. Your fingers are stiff this morning. They're always stiff now, cramped from years of holding needle and thread, from the endless, repetitive motions of your trade. At 32, your hands look older than your face, marked by tiny prick wounds that never quite heal, the skin dry and cracked from the harsh soaps you use to clean your work. You sit on the edge of your narrow bed, feet touching the cold wooden floor, and flex your fingers slowly. The pain is like a dull knife, working its way up from your knuckles to your wrists, then settling into your shoulders where you carry all your tension. This is how every day begins now, with an accounting of aches, a mental inventory of what hurts and how much. The little brown bottle on your washstand catches the weak morning light. Dr. Morrison's soothing elixir. The label reads, though the letters are worn now from your repeated handling, for the relief of nervous complaints, digestive troubles, and disorders of a feminine nature. The bottle is smaller than it was yesterday. They always are. You reach for it with practiced ease, measuring out a teaspoon of the dark, bitter liquid. It tastes of poppy and dreams, of temporary forget. The laudanum, though you don't think of it by that name, don't think of it as anything other than medicine, slides down your throat like liquid amber. Relief will come soon, it always does. But first there are the morning rituals to observe. The careful washing of face and hands in the basin of cold water. The braiding of your dark hair, now showing threads of premature gray. The donning of your work dress. The same brown wool you've worn for 3 years running, mended in places where the fabric has grown thin. By the time you've descended the narrow stairs to your workroom, the medicine is beginning to work its gentle magic. The sharp edges of pain are softening, blunting into something manageable. Your fingers, which moments ago felt like clumsy sausages, now move with something approaching their old grace. Your workroom occupies the ground floor of the house you rent from Mrs. Hartwell. It's a cramped space, made smaller by the bolts of fabric that line the walls, the half-finished gowns hanging like ghosts from wooden form. A large table dominates the center of the room, scarred from years of cutting and pinning, marked by countless tiny holes from needles that have missed their mark. This morning, like every morning, you begin with the most delicate work while your hands are steadiest. A wedding dress for Miss Charlotte Pemberton, daughter of a prosperous merchant. The silk is the color of cream, soft and whispering under your fingers. French silk, she had specified, before the troubles with France made such requests both dangerous and expensive. As you work, your mind drifts in that pleasant cotton wool way that has become familiar. The laudanum creates a gentle buffer between you and the world, softening not just physical pain, but the sharp edges of worry that have plagued you since your husband Thomas died 2 years ago. The consumption took him slowly, and you watched every labored breath, heard every wet cough that shook his thin frame. It was Thomas's coughing that first introduced laudanum into your life. Dr. Pemberton, no relation to your current client, had prescribed it for the pain, for the sleepless nights when Thomas would sit upright fighting for each breath. Just a few drops, the doctor had said, when the pain becomes unbearable. After Thomas died, the bottle remained. On nights when grief felt like a physical weight pressing down on your chest, when the silence of the house seemed to echo with his absence, you would measure out a careful teaspoon, just enough to sleep, just enough to forget for a few hours. But grief, you discovered, is not the only pain that laudanum can soothe. The autumn of 1794 bleeds into winter, and your morning doses gradually increase, not dramatically. You're careful about that, mindful of the doctor's warnings about excessive indulgence. But a teaspoon becomes a teaspoon and a half, then 2 teaspoons. Your body, it seems, has grown accustomed to the medicine's benefits and requires a bit more to achieve the same relief. December brings the worst fog London has seen in years. It seeps through every crack and crevice, turning the world into a gray, muffled place, where sounds are dampened and distances become impossible to judge. You find yourself taking an extra dose on these foggy days, telling yourself it's because the damp aggravates your joint pain. The laudanum helps you focus, helps cut through the mental fog that seems to match the physical gloom outside your windows. Your work continues. The wedding dress is finished, delivered to much acclaim from Miss Pemberton and her mother. There are other commissions. A riding habit for Lady Thornwood, day dresses for the Morrison sisters, endless mending for the working families who form the backbone of your clientele. Your reputation remains solid, your stitches are still even, your seams still straight, but there are small changes, subtle shifts that you don't quite acknowledge to yourself. The morning ritual of measuring your dose has become more elaborate. You find yourself savoring the anticipation, the moment before the bottle touches your lip. Sometimes you catch yourself counting the hours until the next dose is due, planning your day around these small ceremonies of relief. The brown bottles accumulate. Dr. Morrison's soothing elixir, Mrs. Winslow's calming cordial, Godfrey's cordial. Each promises the same gentle oblivion, the same temporary peace. You tell yourself you're simply ensuring you don't run out of medicine. A sensible precaution for someone who depends on it for daily functioning. Your sleep, paradoxically, becomes more troubled even as you take more medicine to achieve it. The laudanum still works, still draws you down into that warm, dark place where pain cannot follow. But your dreams have grown strange, populated by phantoms that seem more real than your waking life. You dream of Thomas often, but not as he was when he died, wasted and hollow-chested. In your laudanum dreams he appears as he was when you first met, young and laughing, his carpenter's hands strong and sure. These dreams are so vivid, so preferable to waking reality, that you find yourself extending your sleep as long as possible. Your workday starts later. You close your shop earlier. The space between doses grows shorter. Spring arrives in 1795. But you experience it as if through amber glass. The world has taken on a golden, honeyed quality that makes everything seem softer, more beautiful. but also more distant. You watch life happening around you as if you're a spectator to your own existence. Your daily routine has crystallized into a precise ritual. Dawn brings the first dose, measured now not in careful teaspoons but in generous tablespoons. The medicine sits in your stomach like warm honey, spreading through your veins with practiced efficiency. By the time you dress and descend to your workroom, the familiar cushion of numbness has settled over you like a familiar shawl. Midday brings the second dose, time to coincide with the meal you rarely finish. Food has lost its appeal. The laudanum suppresses your appetite as efficiently as it suppresses your pain. You've grown thin, your face taking on the hollow-cheeked look that's become fashionable among the wealthy but on you simply looks like illness. The afternoon dose comes at 4 o'clock, when the light begins to fail, and the day's work becomes more difficult. By evening you're measuring out your fourth helping of liquid peace, sometimes a fifth, if sleep proves elusive. Your clients begin to notice changes, though they attribute them to grief that has lingered too long. Mrs. Hartwell, your landlady, mentions that you've become quieter, more withdrawn. Perhaps you need to get out more, dear, she suggests one morning, her kind face creased with concern. A young woman like you shouldn't spend all her time alone with her needlework, but the outside world has become increasingly difficult to navigate. The noise of the street seems amplified, overwhelming. The press of bodies in the marketplace makes you anxious in a way you can't explain. Even simple interactions, purchasing thread, discussing a commission with a new client, require enormous effort. The laudanum helps with this too, creating a buffer between you and a world that has grown too sharp, too demanding. Your work miraculously remains steady. Your hands still know their business, even when your mind drifts. Muscle memory guides your needle even when you're floating in that peaceful amber-lit space that the medicine creates. You've become adept at working in a state of partial consciousness, your fingers following familiar patterns, while your thoughts wander through corridors of pleasant emptiness. But the world outside your laudanum haze is becoming increasingly unstable. Food prices are rising as England's war with France drags on. There are riots in the poorer districts, desperate people protesting the cost of bread. Political tensions run high, and there are whispers of revolution, of ideas spreading from France that threaten the established order. You hear these things as if from a great distance, filtered through the cotton wool buffer that has become your constant companion. The problems of the world seem manageable when viewed through laudanum's lens, reduced to interesting stories that don't quite touch your personal reality. By summer your relationship with the brown bottles has developed its own internal logic, a mathematics of need that governs every aspect of your existence. You know precisely how long each bottle will last based on your current consumption. You know which apothecaries are most generous with their measurements, which ones ask fewer questions about frequency of purchase. Your morning routine now begins before dawn, your body waking not to natural rhythms, but to the demands of withdrawal. The space between doses has become a place of increasing discomfort. Not just physical, though that's certainly present, but a deeper unease, a sense that the world is tilting slightly off its axis. The withdrawal starts subtly. Your hands begin to tremble, just barely, but enough to make threading a needle difficult. Your stomach churns with a hollow, acidic feeling that has nothing to do with hunger. Sleep becomes elusive despite your exhaustion, your mind racing with anxious thoughts that circle like vultures. But the morning dose fixes everything, as it always does. The trembling stops, your stomach settles, the anxious chattering in your head quiets to a peaceful hum. For a few hours you are yourself again, or what you've come to think of as yourself. This calmer, more manageable version of Sarah Mitchell. The problem is that a few hours is becoming a few minutes. The relief that once lasted from dawn to midday now barely carries you to mid-morning. You find yourself watching the clock, counting minutes until the next dose is permissible, negotiating with yourself about what constitutes a medical necessity. Your financial situation, precarious since Thomas's death, grows more dire. The brown bottles are expensive, and your consumption has increased to the point where a significant portion of your earnings goes toward maintaining your supply. You begin to take on additional work, accepting commissions that would have been beneath your standards a year ago. Simple mending, alterations, work that pays little but keeps your hands busy and provides the coins necessary for your medicine. The irony doesn't escape you entirely. You work to afford the medicine that allows you to work. It's a closed loop, a snake eating its own tail, but it's the only system that makes sense anymore. Your social world contracts further. Mrs. Hartwell's concerned inquiries become easier to deflect when your interactions are brief and purposeful. You develop a repertoire of responses. I'm managing well, thank you. The work keeps me busy. I prefer the quiet life these days. These phrases roll off your tongue with practiced ease, shields against curiosity and care that feel increasingly intrusive. The other seamstresses in the district notice your withdrawal from their informal gatherings. There used to be evenings when you would join Mary Wickham and Susan Pratt for tea and gossip, sharing the small dramas of your trade. Now these invitations feel overwhelming, requiring a level of social energy you no longer possess. It's easier to remain in your amber-lit cocoon, where conversation is unnecessary and expectations are manageable. Autumn returns, bringing with it the anniversary of your first tentative sips of laudanum. A year of medicine, you tell yourself. A year of successful pain management, but the mathematics have grown more complex, the calculations more urgent. You now maintain multiple supplies, bottles hidden in various locations throughout your small domain. One in your bedroom, behind the loose board you discovered near the window. Another in your workroom, tucked inside a bolt of dark wool that rarely gets used. A third in the kitchen, nestled among the preserving jars that haven't seen use since Thomas died. This redundancy is born of a fear you don't quite acknowledge, the terror of running out, of facing a day without your liquid comfort. You've heard stories, whispered conversations about people who became too fond of their medicine, but these stories feel like cautionary tales from another world, applicable to people with less self-control, less legitimate need. Your consumption has settled into a rhythm of 8 doses daily, timed with the precision of a church bell. Every 3 hours you pause whatever you're doing for your small ceremony of relief. The ritual has become elaborate, the careful selection of which bottle to use, the slow pour of liquid into a proper teaspoon, the moment of anticipation before the bittersweet taste floods your mouth. Between doses, time takes on a strange quality. Minutes drag when you're approaching your scheduled time, each tick of the clock, a small eternity. But once the medicine takes effect, hours seem to compress, passing in a pleasant blur of productivity and peace. You exist in a series of 3-hour cycles, each one a small lifetime contained within the larger arc of your days. Your dreams continue to be vivid, but they've taken on a recursive quality. Dreams within dreams that leave you uncertain upon waking about which memories are real and which are products of your medicated sleep. Thomas appears regularly, sometimes as himself, sometimes as an amalgamation of all the men you've ever known. These dream conversations feel more real than your waking interactions, and you find yourself looking forward to sleep not just for the escape it provides, but for the company. The physical changes are becoming more pronounced. Your appetite has nearly disappeared entirely. Eating requires conscious effort, and most foods taste like ash in your mouth. You've lost weight steadily. Your work dress is hanging loose on your diminished frame. Your skin has taken on a grayish pallor that no amount of rouge can disguise, and your eyes have developed a glassy quality that reflects light strangely. But your hands remain steady while medicated, and your work continues to meet the standards that have built your reputation. This is the fact you cling to when doubts creep in during the small hours between your night dose and your morning relief. You are still functional. You are still productive. You are still Sarah Mitchell, seamstress of Drury Lane, Widow making her way in an unforgiving world. Winter settles over London like a heavy blanket, and your world contracts further still. The cold seems to penetrate deeper now, reaching places that no amount of coal fire can warm. Your doses increase again. You tell yourself it's because of the weather, because cold aggravates pain, because everyone needs a bit more comfort during the dark month. You've established relationships with 4 different apothecaries now, rotating your purchases to avoid the uncomfortable questions that come with too frequent visits to the same shop. Mr. Whitmore on Fleet Street knows you as Miss Thompson, a widow caring for an elderly mother with nervous complaints. Dr. Hartwell's shop on Cheapside recognizes you as Miss Davies, a seamstress treating chronic pain from years of close work. Each identity comes with its own story, its own reason for needing regular supplies of laudanum-based medicines. The deception requires energy you can barely spare, but it's become necessary. There's a look that appears in apothecaries' eyes when they recognize a too frequent customer, a combination of professional concern and moral judgment that makes your skin crawl. It's easier to be multiple people with legitimate needs than one person with an illegitimate hunger. Your sleep schedule has inverted. You find yourself most alert during the late-night hours, when the world is quiet and the demands of social interaction are minimal. These midnight hours become your most productive time, when needle and thread move with something approaching their old precision. You work by candlelight, creating beautiful things in the amber glow while the rest of London sleeps. Dawn brings exhaustion and the first dose of the day, measured now in quantities that would have horrified your former self. But your former self had different problems, different needs. Your current self has found a solution that works, a way of managing not just pain but the entire overwhelming business of existence. The laudanum has become more than medicine. It's become architecture. It structures your time, defines your space, creates the parameters within which your life unfolds. Without it, you're not entirely sure what shape your days would take, what rhythm would govern your hours. Your financial reserves dwindle steadily. The cost of maintaining your supply has grown to consume not just your earnings, but your savings, the small nest egg you and Thomas had built during your marriage. You begin to sell possessions, first the non-essential items, then pieces of furniture, finally some of Thomas's tools that you'd kept as mementos. Each sale is a small death, a severing of connection to the life you used to live. But the alternative, facing days without your medicine, seems impossible. The few times you've been forced to delay a dose due to supply problems, the world becomes unbearable. Every sound too loud, every sensation too sharp, every emotion too intense. The laudanum doesn't just manage pain, it manages reality itself, filtering it through amber glass until it becomes tolerable. Spring 1796 arrives wet and cold, and you greet it from your workroom window with hands that shake between doses and eyes that have grown hollow in your increasingly gaunt face. The seasonal renewal happening outside feels like a mockery of your internal winter, the persistent cold that no amount of medicine can completely warm. Your morning routine has expanded to accommodate the increasing complexity of your need. The first dose comes before you're fully awake, an automatic response to the anxiety that now greets you each dawn. By the time you're dressed and downstairs, it's time for the second dose. The third comes with what you optimistically call breakfast, but which consists mainly of tea and the bitter comfort of your medicine. The intervals between doses have shortened to 2 hours. Any longer and the trembling starts, along with a restless agitation that makes concentration impossible. Your work suffers during these intervals, your stitches becoming uneven, your cutting less precise, but the medicine fixes everything, as it always has, smoothing the rough edges of existence, until you can function again. Your body has become a demanding timekeeper. It knows when a dose is due with clockwork precision, signaling its needs through a symphony of discomfort. The racing heart, the clammy skin, the hollow ache that starts in your stomach and radiates outward. These signals have become more important than hunger, thirst, or sleep. They are the drumbeat that drives your days. You've begun to fear sleep, despite the exhaustion that weighs on you constantly. Sleep means hours without medicine, and your body has grown intolerant of even brief periods without its chemical comfort. You wake frequently, checking the time, calculating how long until your next dose is permissible. Sometimes you compromise, taking a smaller amount in the middle of the night, telling yourself it's just to help you sleep better. The world outside your laudanum-mediated existence continues its turbulent course. There are food riots in Spitalfields, political demonstrations that turn violent, rumors of French spies and English radicals plotting revolution. But these events feel like stories from another country, filtered through the amber lens that has become your constant companion. They're interesting in an abstract way, like stories from a book about people who live very different lives. Your isolation deepens. Miss Hartwell's inquiries about your health become easier to deflect because they come from such a great distance, across the chasm that separates your internal reality from the world of people who live without chemical assistance. You've developed a skill for appearing more present than you actually are, for nodding at appropriate moments and making sounds of agreement that seem to satisfy most social requirements. The mirror in your bedroom has become an enemy. The face that looks back at you is recognizably yours but transformed, as if you're seeing yourself through water. Your cheeks have hollowed, your eyes have receded into their sockets, and your skin has taken on the grayish pallor that speaks of poor circulation and inadequate nutrition. You avoid the mirror when possible, focusing instead on your hands, which still perform their familiar tasks with medicated precision. By midsummer, your life has been reduced to its essential elements: work and medicine, medicine and work, with brief interludes for sleep that comes only with chemical assistance. You've achieved a kind of equilibrium, a delicate balance that requires constant maintenance but which allows you to continue functioning in the world. Your consumption has stabilized at 12 doses daily, every 2 hours from dawn until midnight. This schedule requires military precision and careful planning. You carry a small bottle wherever you go, hidden in the folds of your dress, and you've memorized the location of every apothecary within walking distance of your usual routes. The financial pressure has reached a crisis point. Your savings are gone, sold possessions have provided only temporary relief, and the cost of your medicine now exceeds your income by a significant margin. You've begun accepting any work offered regardless of quality or pay. Simple hemming, basic alterations, repairs to garments that would have been beneath your notice in better days. Your reputation for fine work remains intact, but you can no longer afford to be selective about clients. You've also begun to take shortcuts in your personal expenses. Coal for heating becomes a luxury saved for only the coldest days. Food purchases are reduced to the bare minimum necessary for survival, though your appetite remains minimal anyway. Candles are burned down to the smallest possible stub before replacement. Every penny saved is a penny that can be redirected toward maintaining your supply of liquid peace. The summer heat becomes another challenge. Your doses make it difficult to regulate your body temperature, and you find yourself alternately shivering and sweating, often within the same hour. You work with the windows closed, afraid that drafts will affect your ability to control the needle and thread. But the stagnant air makes concentration even more difficult between doses. Your hands have begun to show the strain. The steady tremor that appears between doses is becoming more pronounced, and even when medicated, your fingers don't possess quite the same precision they once did. You compensate by working more slowly, taking greater care with each stitch, but this reduces your productivity and further impacts your already strained finances.
Sleep has become a battleground. Your body demands the medicine every 2 hours, but sleep requires longer intervals between doses. You've begun splitting the difference, taking smaller amounts more frequently through the night, setting yourself to wake every hour to maintain the chemical balance that keeps withdrawal at bay. This interrupted sleep leaves you exhausted during the day, creating a cycle that can only be managed with more medicine. Autumn 1796 brings a new level of precision to your daily routine. You've learned to anticipate your body's needs with scientific accuracy, measuring not just the timing of your doses but their exact quantity based on the nature of the work you need to perform, the weather, your stress level, and dozens of other variables that affect how the medicine works in your system. You've become an expert in the subtle differences between the various laudanum preparations available around London. Dr. Morrison's formula has a slightly sweeter taste but shorter duration of effect. Mrs. Winslow's version lasts longer but sometimes causes nausea if taken on an empty stomach. Godfrey's cordial works fastest but requires larger quantities for the same level of relief. This expertise has practical applications. You can stretch your supply by mixing different preparations, creating custom blends that maximize effectiveness while minimizing cost. You've learned which apothecaries are most generous with their measurements, which ones can be convinced to extend credit, which ones ask the fewest questions about frequency of purchase. Your social connections have reduced to purely transactional relationships. Mrs. Hartwell remains a source of minor kindnesses, occasionally bringing you soup or tea, asking perfunctory questions about your health. But these interactions feel like theatrical performances in which you play the role of a functioning person. You've become skilled at providing the responses that will end conversations quickly while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. Your work continues, though it now requires increasingly elaborate preparation. Before beginning any delicate task, you time your medicine precisely to ensure peak effectiveness during the most challenging portions of the work. Simple hemming can be accomplished during the declining phase of a dose, but intricate beadwork or fine embroidery requires the steady hands that come only during the first hour after taking your medicine. You've developed a system of quality control that accounts for your altered state. Work completed during off-peak hours is carefully reviewed and often redone during periods of maximum steadiness. This double work reduces your productivity but maintains the standards that keep clients coming back. The physical toll continues to mount. You've lost so much weight that your clothes hang on your frame like garments made for a different person. Your hair has grown thin and lifeless, breaking easily and losing its former luster. Your skin has taken on a waxy quality that no amount of rouge can disguise, and your eyes have developed the glassy, distant look that suggests your mind is always somewhere else. But your mind, when medicated, remains sharp. You can still calculate complex measurements, visualize how pieces of fabric will fit together, remember the preferences of dozens of clients. The laudanum doesn't cloud your thinking so much as insulate it, creating a buffer between your consciousness and the distracting noise of physical discomfort. December arrives with unusual severity, bringing snowfall that blankets London in white silence. Your unheated workroom becomes almost unbearable, but the cost of coal competes with the cost of medicine, and the choice is never really a choice at all. You work wearing gloves with the fingertips cut off, stopping frequently to warm your hands over the single candle that provides your light. The cold affects how your medicine works. Your body processes it differently in low temperatures, requiring slight adjustments to timing and dosage that you calculate through careful observation of your symptoms. The precision required has become almost scientific, a delicate chemistry experiment performed on your own body every 2 hours. Your supply chain faces new challenges as winter deepens. Some apothecaries reduce their hours or close entirely during the worst weather, forcing you to venture further from home to maintain your stocks. You've begun hoarding medicine like a squirrel storing nuts, keeping larger reserves hidden throughout your small domain to guard against supply disruptions. The physical effort required to maintain your routine has grown enormous. Simply getting dressed and descending to your workroom requires careful planning and significant expenditure of energy. You move slowly, conservatively, afraid that sudden movements or excessive exertion will upset the delicate chemical balance that keeps you functional. Your sleep has fragmented into brief intervals punctuated by doses of medicine. You rarely experience more than an hour of continuous rest, and your dreams have become strange, fragmented narratives that blend memories with hallucination. Thomas appears regularly in these visions, sometimes as he was, sometimes transformed into other figures from your past, sometimes as a voice without a body offering comfort or advice. Food has become purely medicinal, consumed only when absolutely necessary to prevent the nausea that can accompany laudanum on an empty stomach. You've lost the ability to taste most things, experiencing food as texture and temperature rather than flavor. Even tea, once a simple pleasure, now serves mainly as a vehicle for your liquid medicine. The mirror has become unnecessary. You know without looking what you would see: the hollow-cheeked face, the glassy eyes, the grayish skin of someone living more in the world of chemistry than biology. Your body has become a machine for processing laudanum, everything else reduced to supporting functions. Spring 1797 arrives like a rumor, barely penetrating the amber-tinted world where you now permanently reside. Your existence has achieved a terrible efficiency, every action calculated to support the central task of maintaining the chemical balance that allows you to function. Your morning routine now begins before dawn, your body's internal alarm clock calibrated not to natural rhythms but to the demands of withdrawal. The first dose comes while you're still in bed, measured and consumed in the darkness, followed by the careful wait for the medicine to take effect before attempting to rise. By mid-morning you require a second dose to maintain steady hands for your needlework. The third comes at noon, the fourth in mid-afternoon, the fifth at evening, and so on through the night. You've settled into a rhythm of 15 doses daily, measured with the precision of a chemist and timed with the regularity of a church bell. The world outside your medicine-mediated existence has grown dim and distant. You hear news of events: King George's ongoing madness, continued war with France, economic troubles that affect everyone, as if these things are happening in a different country to people you've never met. Your reality consists of the space between doses, the careful calculation of supply and demand, the endless repetition of measuring, consuming and waiting. Your work continues because it must, but it requires increasingly elaborate accommodation. You can only perform your most skilled tasks during the peak effectiveness of each dose, roughly 30 to 60 minutes after consumption. The rest of the time is spent on simple repetitive work that doesn't require steady hands or sharp concentration. Clients continue to come, drawn by your reputation for quality and reliability, unaware of the elaborate chemical choreography required to maintain these standards. You've become skilled at timing their visits for your peak performance periods, scheduling fittings and consultations for the narrow windows when you can present your most capable self. Your financial situation has reached a kind of equilibrium, though at a level that would have horrified your former self. Every penny earned goes toward either basic survival or medicine, with no room for luxuries or unexpected expenses. You've calculated that you can maintain this balance indefinitely, as long as your supply remains stable and your ability to work continues. The isolation is now complete. Mrs. Hartwell's occasional inquiries have dwindled to polite nods when you pass in the hallway. The other seamstresses in the district have stopped inviting you to their gatherings. You exist in a bubble of chemical calm, insulated from the social world by layers of medicated distance. Your body has adapted to its new chemistry with remarkable efficiency. The trembling, nausea, and anxiety that marked your early withdrawal experiences have been replaced by a more subtle but pervasive discomfort that appears only when your next dose is significantly overdue. You've learned to read these signals with expert precision, timing your consumption to prevent any significant dip in your chemical stability. Sleep comes in fragments, brief periods of unconsciousness between the doses that punctuate your night. You've grown accustomed to this interrupted rest, and indeed continuous sleep has become impossible. Your body wakes itself every 2 hours with clockwork precision, demanding its scheduled dose of liquid peace. Summer 1797 passes in a haze of golden-tinted routine. Your days have achieved a kind of perfection in their predictability. The measured doses, the careful work, the precise timing that keeps withdrawal at bay. You move through your small world like a dancer following choreography learned by heart, every step planned and executed with chemical precision. You've noticed that your perception of time has changed. Hours can pass without your awareness while you work in your medicated state, your hands following familiar patterns while your mind drifts through landscapes of memory and dream. Conversely, the minutes between needing a dose and being able to take one stretch like hours, each second distinct and uncomfortable. Your relationship with your medicine has evolved beyond simple dependence into something approaching religious devotion. The ritual of measurement and consumption has acquired ceremonial weight. You handle your bottles with reverence, pour each dose with the precision of a priest offering communion, consume the bitter liquid with the solemnity of someone taking sacrament. The world continues to change around you, but these changes barely register in your amber-tinted consciousness. There are rumors of rebellion in Ireland, continued fighting in Europe, social tensions that seem always on the verge of eruption. But these distant troubles feel like stories from mythology, too remote to affect your carefully managed existence. Your work remains your connection to the outside world, though even this connection has grown attenuated. Clients come and go, garments are commissioned and completed, payments are made and received, but these interactions take place across a great distance, separated by the chemical buffer that insulates you from unmediated experience. You've begun to have difficulty remembering what you were like before laudanum became the organizing principle of your life. Your pre-medicine self seems like someone you might have known once, a person whose motivations and concerns have grown incomprehensible. The idea of living without your chemical assistance appears not just difficult but meaningless, like trying to